The boardroom had seen many things. Hostile takeovers. Silent threats delivered over green tea. Men who walked in powerful and left understanding exactly how temporary power could be. The calm boardroom had witnessed all of it without flinching. It had never witnessed this. Two small boys in matching gray school uniforms, identical in every possible way, the same jawline, the same serious dark eyes, the same stillness that didn't belong on 5-year-old faces, standing at the entrance of the room like they owned it. One of them pointed directly at Kang Seo-jin, the most feared man in 3 provinces, seated at the head of a table surrounded by 12 of his senior directors. "That's him," the boy said to his brother. Completely calm, completely certain. "That's our dad." The room stopped breathing. Seo-jin's pen was still in his hand. It stayed there. Because for the first time in 15 years of running an empire built on control, Kang Seo-jin had no available response to what was standing in his doorway. And behind the boys, walking in slowly, her architecture portfolio under her arm, her natural hair pinned back, wearing a fitted charcoal dress that said she had not come here for him, she had come here for business, was Amara Osei-Kang. 5 years older, more beautiful than his memory had been honest about, and looking at him with the specific expression of a woman who has survived something and wants you to know it. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Welcome to Afro Soul Connect. On today's episode, you get a dose of culture clash, forbidden love, family pressure, second chances, and an unforgettable reunion. If this is your first time here, make sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification icon so you never miss a new story when it drops. And don't forget to send this story to a friend or family member you think would love it. Also, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I'd really love to know. Now, let's dive back into this amazing story. To understand what that boardroom moment cost everyone in it, you have to go back 8 years. Before the divorce papers. Before the disappearance. Before the twins. Before everything. You have to go back to a charity auction in Gangnam on a Thursday evening where a Ghanaian architect named Amara Osei outbid Kang Seo-jin on a painting he didn't even want, a small abstract piece in burnt orange and deep green that reminded her of her grandmother's kitchen in Accra and reminded him of nothing because he had come to the auction to be seen, not to feel anything. She raised her paddle without hesitation when he raised his. He raised his again. Reflex. He always won. She raised hers. Didn't even look at him. He turned to look at her then. She was the only person in the room who hadn't looked at him first. In a room full of people performing their awareness of his presence, this woman in a simple green dress, with paint still faintly visible under her left thumbnail, was entirely focused on the painting. Not on him. Not on the spectacle of bidding against the Kang name. On the painting. He let her win. He told himself it was a strategic choice. It wasn't. "You can afford another one," she said afterward, when he appeared beside her holding 2 glasses of champagne and offering her one with the particular ease of a man who assumes yes. She took the glass. "But that one specifically was mine. So thank you for not being ridiculous about it." "I'm usually ridiculous about most things," he said. "I know who you are," she said. "Which is why I'm telling you this is just champagne." "Just champagne," he agreed. It was not just champagne. 11 months later, Amara Osei became Amara Osei-Kang in a small private ceremony that his mother attended under protest, and her father attended via video call from Accra because she had not given anyone enough notice, and if Amara Osei-Kang decided something was happening, it happened on her timeline. Seo-jin had never met anyone who operated like that, who moved through the world with such complete ownership of her own decisions, her own time, her own space. She redesigned 2 rooms in his penthouse the first month without asking, just arrived one Saturday morning with samples and opinions and the specific energy of a woman who understood that good design was not decoration but language. "You're not going to ask me?" he said, watching her hold fabric swatches against the wall. "Would you have said no?" she asked. He thought about it. "No." "Then I saved us both the conversation," she said, and smiled at the wall. He fell in love with her somewhere in that first month. Not with a single moment, but with an accumulation. The way she talked to his housekeeper like a person, the way she corrected his posture at dinner without apology, The way she laughed at 3 in the morning over something she'd read and didn't explain it, just let the laughter live in the room and trusted him to enjoy the sound without needing the reason. For 3 years, she was the only soft thing in his life. Then the threats started arriving. And the most dangerous thing Seo-jin had ever built was not his empire. It was the life Amara Osei-Kang didn't know she was living inside. The first threat came through a florist. 12 black roses delivered to the penthouse on a Tuesday morning while Amara was at her studio. No card. Just the flowers and the specific message that anyone in Seo-jin's world understood immediately. Black roses meant the sender knew where she slept. He stood in the kitchen holding the arrangement for a long time. The second message came 3 days later. A photograph left on his car, Amara leaving her studio, laughing on her phone, completely unaware, taken from across the street by someone who wanted him to know exactly how close they could get without her knowing. Seo-jin put both items in a box, locked it, told nobody. He started sleeping less, started positioning security around her movements without telling her why, started answering questions she asked about his mood with deflections so smooth she almost believed them. Almost. "Something is wrong," she said one evening, watching him from the sofa, her sketchbook open on her lap, her eyes on him instead. "And you are not going to tell me what it is?" "Nothing is wrong," he said. "Jisoo," she said, using the private name only she used, not Seo-jin, not boss, but Jisoo, the boy inside the empire. "I'm an architect. I read structures. I know when something is load-bearing and when it's decorative. Whatever you're carrying right now is load-bearing. And you're trying to hide it." He looked at her for a long moment. "Some things don't need to be carried by 2 people," he said. "We're married," she said. "That's literally the arrangement." He said nothing. And the silence that followed was the first real crack, the first thing she couldn't design or fix or talk her way through. She felt it. He watched her feel it. And he let it stand there between them rather than fill it with the truth, which was that 3 rival families had now put her name in written correspondence, and a man named Bae Sung-il had sent a personal message to Seo-jin that said, simply and clearly, "Beautiful wife." The families were circling. They knew she was the only vulnerability he had ever allowed himself. He made a decision that cost him everything in order to protect the only thing that mattered. He called his lawyer that night. From the car, outside their building, while she was inside making tea, unaware that the man she married was already beginning to disappear. The divorce papers arrived through intermediaries 6 weeks later. Amara never saw Seo-jin again before they were served. No conversation. No explanation. Just documents and a settlement figure so large it told her exactly one thing, that whatever the reason was, it was serious enough for him to try to buy his way out of the guilt. She refused the settlement. She kept his name. Not for him. For reasons she would understand later, when her sons arrived and she looked at their faces and understood that some things could not be reduced to paperwork. "Why are you keeping his name?" her best friend Yesai asked, the night after the papers arrived, sitting with her in the Accra apartment she'd retreated to, both of them surrounded by packing boxes and half-empty wine glasses. "Because I built things with that name," Amara said. "I'm not letting him take the build." She was 8 weeks pregnant. She didn't know yet. She found out 3 weeks after arriving in Accra, sat in a white-tiled pharmacy bathroom with the test in her hand and thought about calling him. Actually reached for her phone. His number connected to a message saying the line had been disconnected. She sat with that information for a very long time. Then she called ESI. "Twins," the ultrasound technician said 5 weeks later, with the specific cheerfulness of someone who doesn't know what that word is going to cost the woman in the chair. Amara looked at the screen, at the 2 small impossibilities inside her. "Of course," she said quietly. "Of course it's twins." She built everything from that word. Her architecture firm, Osei-Kang Design, launched from her mother's dining room table with a second-hand laptop and contracts she won purely on the precision and fearlessness of her proposals. She raised her sons with the specific intentionality of a woman building a structure that had to last. Kofi and Kwame Osei-Kang, both of them carrying their father's face and their mother's courage. She told them the truth at age 4. As simply as she could. Your father is a man in Korea who loved us the best way he knew how, which wasn't enough. But his name is yours because you are built from both of us, and that is nothing to be ashamed of. Kofi, the older twin by 4 minutes, looked at her very seriously and said, "Can we meet him?"
"One day," she said.
She had not planned for one day to arrive through a building contract. The Kang Financial Tower Commission came through her firm's international portfolio, the tallest building in Seoul's new financial district, open tender, awarded on merit. She didn't know who the client was until the contract landed on her desk with the Kang Corporation letterhead at the top. She sat with that contract for 3 days. Then she signed it, because Amara Osei-Kang had never once let a man, not even the right one, determine the shape of her ambition. Seoul smelled like winter and ambition the morning she arrived. Amara walked through Incheon Airport with Kofi on her left and Kwame on her right, both of them in matching gray school uniforms because the Seoul International School had sent the dress code and her boys had decided uniforms were exciting, and she had not had the energy to argue with that particular enthusiasm. She had arranged for the boys to come to the first site meeting with her because her childcare arrangement had fallen through at the last minute and because, if she was being fully honest with herself in the way she only managed at 4 in the morning, she had known for 3 days that Seo-jin would likely be at the initial client meeting. She had told herself she was prepared. She was not prepared. The Kang Corporation headquarters occupied 42 floors of a building so deliberately imposing it practically announced itself as a monument to the consequences of underestimating its owner. Amara had designed 2 buildings taller. She walked in without looking up. The receptionist led them to the 42nd floor. The elevator opened directly into a boardroom. Wide, minimal, floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking a Seoul skyline that looked, at this height, like something she could hold in her hand. 12 men in suits rose from the conference table as the door opened. Seo-jin did not rise. He was already standing. And for one unguarded second, before his boardroom composure assembled itself fully, she saw what it cost him to see her walk through that door. Not guilt. Not surprise. She suspected he knew she was coming, had probably known from the moment the contract was awarded. What moved across his face in that one unguarded second was something closer to relief, so enormous and so unwelcome that it frightened him into stillness. He looked exactly the same. That was the unfair part. 5 years and 2 children and a complete rebuilding of her entire life, and he looked exactly the same. Tall, controlled, the specific gravity of a man who had spent his whole life deciding things and living with the weight of them. Short, dark hair. Sharp jawline, eyes that found her across the room and stayed there for half a second too long before moving to the boys. And staying there. She watched him look at her sons. She watched him absorb their faces. Both of them. The jawline he shaved every morning on his own face, looking back at him from 2 small boys in gray uniforms. The stillness he'd been told all his life was intimidating, standing in the doorway of his own boardroom at 1/10 his size. Kofi pointed at him. "That's him," Kofi said to Kwame. "That's our dad." Nobody in the room moved. Seo-jin's pen was still in his hand. His 12 directors were statues. Amara watched him absorb the single most significant sentence anyone had spoken in this room in 15 years of Kang Corporation boardroom history, delivered by a 5-year-old in a gray uniform with his father's face, without drama, without ceremony, with the complete factual certainty of a child who has been told the truth and simply applied it. "Amara," Seo-jin said. His voice was completely steady. Only she would have known what that steadiness cost. "Mr. Kang," she said, "just as steady. We're here about the tower. Before this story takes its final turn, I need you to drop a comment right now. Do you think Amara should have told Seo-jin about the twins from the beginning? Or did his disappearance cost him that right completely? Tell me what you think before everything changes." He cleared the boardroom in under a minute. 12 directors who had survived hostile takeovers and international crises filed out with the specific efficiency of people who understood, without being told, that what was about to happen in this room was not for witnesses. The last one closed the door quietly behind him. Seo-jin crouched down to the boy's level. This was the thing about him she had forgotten. He did not manage children from a height. He came down to where they were, which was the same instinct that had made her fall in love with him. The gap between the public man and the private one, the way the armor came off in rooms where it wasn't needed. "What are your names?" he asked.
Quietly.
Directly. The way he spoke to people he was taking seriously. "Kofi," said Kofi. "Kwame," said Kwame. "Who is older?" Seo-jin asked. "Me," said Kofi. "By 4 minutes. Which Kwame says doesn't count, but it does count." "It counts," Seo-jin said. The ghost of something crossed his face that was not quite a smile, but lived in the same neighborhood. Amara watched this from across the room with her portfolio against her chest and something aching in her sternum that she had spent 5 years trying to correctly label and failing. "Can you give us a moment?" she said to the boys. "There's a waiting area with a sofa just outside." Kofi assessed the situation with the specific thoroughness he'd inherited from both parents and apparently decided it was acceptable. He took his brother's hand and walked out without argument. Amara waited until the door closed. Then there was just the two of them, for the first time in 5 years. In a room made entirely of glass with souls spread out below them like an argument neither of them had finished making.
"You disappeared," she said.
Not with anger. Anger had dissolved somewhere around the twins' second birthday. What was left was something flatter and more permanent. "You disconnected your number. Your lawyers wouldn't tell me anything except the settlement amount, which I returned." "I know," he said. "They threatened you through me," she said. It wasn't a question. She had figured this out over years, quietly, the way she figured everything out, by looking at the structure until it revealed its own logic. The divorce was protection. He was silent for exactly 3 seconds. "Yes," he said. "You should have told me," she said. "You would have stayed," he said. "Yes," she said. "I would have." The simplicity of it landed between them like something physical. He looked at her for a long time. The way he used to look at her in their kitchen on Sunday mornings when she was reading and didn't know he was watching, like she was the most interesting problem he had ever encountered, and he had no intention of solving her, only of understanding her better, always better. "I have 2 sons," he said. The first time he said it out loud. His voice held perfectly on the first word and shifted very slightly on the last one. "We have 2 sons," she said, quietly. "And they know your name and your face and exactly who you are."
"I didn't keep that from them."
"That was a decision I made on purpose, so you should know it wasn't easy, and it wasn't for you. It was for them." He closed his eyes briefly. "Amara, I'm not here for this conversation," she said. "I'm here about the tower. But I knew you'd be here. I came anyway, because they've been asking about you since they were 3, and I didn't know what to tell them except the truth, and the truth needed a face eventually." He looked at the door where his sons had just been. "They're extraordinary," he said. "I know," she said. "I made them with very little help." He deserved that. He took it without defense. What happened next was the thing nobody in the Kang organization had predicted, and the thing that rewrote the architecture of everything that followed. Seo-jin walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and placed a document on the table between them. Not a contract. Not a legal brief. A photograph.
Old.
Worn at the edges from handling. 2 people at a charity auction in Gangnam, him in a dark suit, her in a green dress, both holding champagne, looking at each other with the particular intensity of people who don't yet know they are looking at their future. "I've had it for 5 years," he said. "I want you to know that. I want you to know that distance was never indifference." She looked at the photograph for a long time. "The threats," she said. "Are they gone?" "Bae Sung-il died 2 years ago," he said. "The families that moved against me 5 years ago no longer exist in any meaningful form. I handled it." She looked up at him. "So the danger is gone?" "Yes," he said. "Then what," she said carefully, "have you been doing for the past 2 years, Jisoo?" The name. His name. The private one. It landed on his face like something warm arriving after a very long cold, and the control he'd been holding for the last 20 minutes shifted visibly. "Missing you," he said simply. "And not knowing if I had the right to say so." She didn't answer him immediately. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling window and looked at Seoul below her and thought about the woman who had left this city 5 years ago with divorce papers and a discontinued phone number and no explanation, And the woman standing in this room now with 2 sons in the waiting area, and a building commission on the table, and enough internal architecture to withstand almost anything. Almost. You don't get to just say that, she said finally, and have it be enough. I know, he said.
5 years, she said.
2 children. A firm I built with my own name on it. Everything that happened in those 5 years. The nights, Jisoo, the nights when they were sick and I was alone in a city that wasn't mine yet and I had no one to call. You don't get to say you missed me and have that cover any of it.
No, he said.
It doesn't. Then what do you want? She asked. He crossed the room. Not fast. The way he moved toward everything important, deliberately, giving her every opportunity to step back, to redirect, to make the decision herself. He stopped 2 feet from her. To start with the truth, he said. For the first time since I knew you. No management. No protection strategy. Just what's true. And what's true, she asked. That I have spent 5 years building the safest possible version of a world I could invite you back into, he said. That every decision I made after you left was made with the question of whether it would eventually make you safer. That I know that doesn't fix what I took from you. That I'm not asking you to forgive me before you're ready. That I want to know my sons. And that I want to know if you, not immediately, not without reason, but eventually, if it's possible, could let me earn back something I should never have surrendered. She looked at him for a long time. Kofi asked me last year, she said quietly, if dads who leave always come back. And I didn't know what to tell him. I said sometimes. He said he thought his would. Seo-jin said nothing. But something moved across his face that was the most unguarded thing she had ever seen on it. More unguarded than the charity auction night, more unguarded than their wedding morning, more honest than anything the armor had ever allowed through.
He was right, Seo-jin said.
She looked at him steadily. I need you to understand that I am not the same woman. I am built differently now. I have requirements and boundaries and 2 small people whose well-being comes before everything else in this or any other conversation.
I know, he said.
And if you are going to be in their lives, she said, you are going to be consistent. Not powerful. Not impressive.
Consistent.
Every birthday. Every school event. Every ordinary Tuesday. Consistent. Yes, he said, without hesitation. She looked at the photograph still on the table between them, then back at him. Build the tower first, she said. We'll talk about the rest while we build it. It wasn't a yes. It wasn't forgiveness. It was the specific offering of a woman who had learned that love built on real ground looks nothing like love built on feeling. It looks like showing up, being accountable, earning the ordinary. The tower took 18 months to build. Seo-jin was at every site meeting. Not because the contract required it. Because she was there. Because Kofi and Kwame started coming to Saturday morning site visits and asking questions about load-bearing structures and foundation depth that made the engineering team look at each other in quiet delight. Because somewhere between the 3rd month and the 9th, the professional distance Amara had installed began to soften at the edges the way well-designed things do when they've been tested long enough by the right conditions. The night the tower was completed, they stood on the roof together. All 4 of them, looking at Seoul lit up below them. Kofi stood beside his father with the ease of a boy who had decided the question of belonging was already answered. Kwame held his mother's hand and asked if they could see Ghana from here. Not quite, Amara said. Maybe from the next one, Seo-jin said. She looked at him over the boys' heads. He was already looking back at her. The expression on his face was the same one from the charity auction 8 years ago, from the Sunday morning kitchen, from every unguarded moment the armor had let through. She reached for his hand. He held it carefully, the way he held everything she had ever given him, like he understood completely the weight of what it cost her and had no intention of being careless with it again. Some things survive what should have ended them. Not because the damage wasn't real, but because what was built was real first, and real things properly maintained outlast almost everything thrown against them. Kang Seo-jin spent 3 years building an empire, and 3 years building a marriage, and 5 years building his way back to the only thing that ever made either of them mean anything. Amara Osei-Kang spent 5 years building everything alone, and then made the most structurally sound decision of her career. She let him help hold the roof. So tell me, do you think Seo-jin deserved the chance Amara gave him, Or did 5 years of silence cost too much to come back from? And if you were Amara, would the photograph have been enough? Or would you have needed more? Would you have kept his name the way she did? Or would that have been the first thing to go? If this story moved you, subscribe to Afro Soul Connect so you never miss the next one. Drop a like, leave your city in the comments, and share this with someone who needs a good love story today. We will see you in the next episode.